From VOA, Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Chinese investment in Australia has moved to the real estate market and construction equipment. It is yet another sign that Australia's once strong mining industry is weakening as Chinese businesses look for new places to invest. For the first time, almost half of all Chinese investment in Australia is in real estate. Spending on roads, bridges, and other infrastructure has also increased. The findings are in a report called Demystifying Chinese Investment in Australia. It comes from accounting company KPMG Australia, the University of Sydney Business School, and the China Studies Center. Hans Hindrischke is a professor of Chinese business and management at the University of Sydney Business School. He says it is striking how Chinese investment changed from big projects in the mining and resources industries to a huge increase in real estate, leisure, and construction. The Chinese bought one of the biggest cinema chains in Australia and one of the two biggest construction firms, John Holland. Last year, the Chinese invested $8.3 billion in Australia. The combination of real estate, entertainment, tourism, sports, and infrastructure projects made up 79% of new Chinese business there. That compares with just 11% for mining. While real estate is the most popular investment, there is growing interest too in Australian agriculture. The falling value of the Australian dollar has made investments in the country more appealing. China is the sixth largest foreign investor in Australia. The United States and Britain invest more, but China's investment is growing faster. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. China and 21 other countries have agreed to start an international development bank. The bank is called the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB. The member nations include Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and the Philippines. Among South Asian nations, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal are also members. In Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping said all the members expressed a desire to pursue common development. Mr. Xi said the AIIB would support regional development and be inclusive and open. 3 countries did not take part in the bank's launch: Indonesia, Southeast Asia's biggest economy, Australia, and South Korea did not join. But South Korea said there would be no reason to not join the bank if certain conditions were met. The U.S. State Department has criticized the proposal for the development bank. Spokeswoman Jen Psaki said the U.S. has concerns about the unclear nature of the AIIB proposal as it currently stands. She said Secretary of State John Kerry has strongly urged that such a bank meet international standards of governance and transparency or openness. She said he also made clear directly to the Chinese government that the U.S. welcomes the idea of an infrastructure bank for Asia. The U.S. has expressed concerns the bank will conflict with the World Bank and Asian Development Bank. Supporters of the proposal say the bank, unlike the World Bank and Asian Development Bank, will center on infrastructure projects instead of poverty reduction. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Brazil is seeking to reduce a budget deficit that led to a drop in the country's credit rating. The government announced spending cuts and tax increases totaling almost $17 billion in September. Officials say they plan to bring back the CPMF, a tax on financial transactions. The government hopes to raise more than $8 billion next year if Congress accepts the tax. However, many lawmakers oppose the measure. Other proposed cuts would reduce government aid for farmers, infrastructure improvements, and pay for government employees. Public health and low-cost housing programs could also face cuts. The government reduced tax subsidies for the chemical industry. It also reduced aid for exporters of manufactured goods and raised taxes on capital gains, profits from sales of investments. Some are calling for the president to resign. Economists have said the expected savings look promising. However, the Speaker of Brazil's lower house of Congress said there is not enough support to approve the CPMF tax. The head of Brazil's Senate said deeper cuts are needed before Congress will agree to more taxes. The government is closing 10 ministries to save money. Also, the proposed reduction in public health and housing spending will be difficult for supporters of President Rousseff. Brazil recently lost its high credit rating. Standard & Poor's no longer considers the country's debt securities as investment grade. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. In June, Cambodian Commerce Minister Sun Chantal spent a week in the United States. The Commerce Minister told Americans about the willingness of Cambodia's government to make deep reforms to improve conditions for investment. He said the reforms would lower costs for investors. He said transportation and energy costs would be reduced. He also said the government would improve the skills of Cambodians through training. Mr. Sun Chantal said the new political will to make reforms is the result of the general elections last year. In the voting, the ruling Cambodian People's Party lost a number of seats in parliament. The opposition Cambodia National Rescue Party disputed the results. It said cheating was to blame. Alex Feldman is president and CEO of the U.S. ASEAN Business Council. He says that investor interest in Cambodia has grown over time. But he says investors need to see more evidence of reform. Mr. Feldman says Cambodia should continue to improve roads, ports, and other infrastructure. He says the country also has to improve the skill base of its citizens and fight corruption. In 2013, Transparency International named Cambodia the most corrupt country in Southeast Asia. Sun Chantal says the Cambodian government has taken major steps toward reform. These include passing an anti-corruption law and creating an agency to fight corruption. Storm Tibb works for the Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. He admits that anti-corruption efforts have increased, but he says a lack of openness about the process will make them ineffective. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Prices on China's stock markets have dropped sharply in recent weeks. The Chinese government warned investors about what it called a panic sentiment. The government has introduced measures it hopes will stop the declining prices. In an effort to avoid further losses, hundreds of companies listed on China's stock exchanges filed papers for trading suspensions. Trading in the stocks of more than 1,400 mainland companies were suspended. That is about 40% of the market. The country's central bank promised to make loans to brokers to make sure they have enough money to carry out trades. And the government moved to permit insurance companies to invest larger amounts of money in stocks. The government agency that oversees the country's biggest state-run companies told them not to sell shares. Instead, it urged them to buy more. The government also took measures to support stock buying. These include reducing interest rates, lowering the fees charged to buy and sell stocks, and easing rules on how much money traders must deposit in order to buy stocks. Chinese markets reached a peak on June 12th. In the year leading up to that date, the value of stocks traded on Chinese exchanges more than doubled. Share prices increased after the central bank cut interest rates for the first time in more than 2 years. A new trading link between the Shanghai and Hong Kong exchanges added to increased market activity. But as the market hit a high, the government tightened trading rules. Investors then began to sell their holdings to protect their profits. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Researchers say that China has provided South Pacific countries with financial assistance worth more than $1 billion in 10 years. The Lowy Institute for International Policy, based in Sydney, Australia, did the study. It is the first comprehensive or complete study of China's growing aid program for the South Pacific. The report says China is likely to become the area's third biggest donor after Australia and the United States. The Institute says the aid seems mostly to be a good action by a responsible global or world citizen. It also says the financial assistance might be a way to ease tensions. Researchers say tensions are caused by a growth in new Chinese companies and Chinese migrants to South Pacific islands. Chinese fishing and mining operations are causing special concern among island communities. The largest Chinese investment project in the region is the $1.6 billion Ramu nickel mine in Papua New Guinea. There is a dispute over its effect on the environment. But China hopes to present a more positive image as a major aid donor. The Lowy Institute study examined information from 500 sources, including budgets, business documents, and government statements. It is the first major study on the subject. Since 2006, China has provided $1.4 billion in foreign aid to the South Pacific region. China has diplomatic relations with 8 South Pacific island nations. Australia remains the largest donor, providing almost $7 billion over the last 10 years. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.